Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and for some of you, good evening. It is the top of the hour, so we're going to dive in. Welcome to this month's webinar called Beyond Engagement, Design Training Activities to Boost Performance. I'm Erin Clark from Endurance Learning, and I'll be your producer today. When I'm not producing webinars, which is most of the time, I'm working to support the instructional design needs of clients in Endurance Learning. On your screen there is a QR code for Endurance Learning's LinkedIn page, and we'd love to have you follow us there. You may ask, why am I following you there? I will tell you. Because we constantly are posting about the world of learning and development. We'll post articles, blog posts, podcasts, some of the latest research and industry trends. We also like to post fun stuff and things we're proud of or project work we've done with the hopes that will either inspire some project work for you or maybe you'll find something that you want to work with us together on. You'll also want to stick around to the end of the webinar because we have two drawings today. The first will be a drawing for one of Brian Washburn's books, and you have the choice of one of two books. The first is Instructional Design on a Shoestring, which focuses more on the tactics of instructional design. The second is What's Your Formula, which focuses on bigger picture training program strategy. Both are excellent choices. We'll also have a drawing for one of our e-learning courses, and we'll talk more about those at the end of today's webinar. So I have one more announcement before I introduce you to Brian, and that is we hope that you'll join us for our webinar next month, which will be more of a continuation of what we're going to start talking about today. The webinar is called Let's Cook, Hands-on Training Design Using Endurance Learning's free training activity cookbook. And that one will be a little bit different in that the webinar will be 75 minutes instead of our typical 60, because we know what we're going to need a little more time to really dig in together and make the most of those, we'll call them recipes. So we hope you can join us for that webinar Thursday, February 5th from 1 to 2:15 p.m. Eastern. And with all of those announcements out of the way, I would love to introduce you to today's presenter. Our presenter is Endurance Learning's co-founder, Brian Washburn. He's been in the world of training and instructional design for about 20 years. Most of his career was spent leading training teams in the nonprofit sector before he launched Endurance Learning in 2015. He's published two full-length books and countless articles on the topic of instructional design and training strategy. So with that, it's time for me to hand the webinar over to Brian.
Thank you, Aaron. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I would love just to start here by having folks just kind of introduce themselves here. So, in the chat, if you want to share your name, your hometown, number of years you've been designing, training. I also noticed that somebody posted their own LinkedIn profile. So, one of the things that we're trying to do is to create a bit of a community here with learning and development professionals. And so if you wanted to share your LinkedIn profile too, that's a great way to connect. So as Aaron mentioned, I'm Brian Washburn. And I've been in the world of learning and development, designing training programs for probably 20, there's a number after the 20 years. And I'm from originally I'm joining you from Seattle, Washington today, but originally I'm from Rochester, New York, close enough to Buffalo, where I am a hardcore Bills fan. We're gonna take on the Denver Broncos this weekend, so go Bills there. And go ahead and continue to share your experience. I'm looking at people's experience level, and I am seeing anywhere from 20, 30, I see 50 years for some folks. So 10 years. I'm seeing lots of double digit when it comes to 33 years, 45 years, 20 years. So I'm really excited that people with such a wealth of experience are continuing to work on their craft and attend sessions like this. So thank you for joining us. And with that said, I don't hold a monopoly on all that is good and wise in learning design. And so for that reason, we're going to get into some small groups a little bit later as we go here. But let's talk about what is today's session. So today's session is called Beyond Engagement Design Training Activities to Boost Performance. And a lot of times when we think of training, we really want it to be engaging. That word engaging is used a lot. And I remember a long time ago, I was in a conversation with some other learning professionals. And one person said, "Ah, engagement. I hate that word engagement. Why do we always have to use that word engagement?" And I was puzzled when she mentioned that because I was thinking, if I had the choice between a training that was engaging and a training that wasn't engaging, I choose training that's engaging. Now, her point was, yeah, but we can't end at engagement. That's not our end goal. We want people to be able to do something new or differently or better. That's really the reason that people invest time and resources in training sessions. And so let's talk about today's session and what we're going to be focused on today. So when it comes to today's session, you're going to have a chance to learn a little bit more about Endurance Learning's four-step design process. And this design process is really rooted in a lot of different adult learning theory and educational theory. If you're familiar with Robert Gagne's 9 events of learning, you'll see echoes of that and inspiration. A lot of inspiration from this design process comes from those 9 events of learning. But 9 events is a lot to remember, so we've kind of boiled it down into 4 design steps. And my promise to you is if you use these 4 steps, you should always have a session that is engaging and you can see if people are getting it. Now, not only are you going to learn about these steps, you're going to have a chance to experience these 4 design steps. And then towards the end, you're going to have a chance just to talk with some other folks to figure out how you can adopt this 4 step process. Maybe to see what's similar to what you're doing, because maybe this is simply going to validate some of the things that you're already doing. Maybe even with all that experience that you have, and I'm pointing over here because this is where I'm monitoring the chat. Maybe even with all that experience, you're going to find some things that perhaps you can start to integrate into your own training sessions. And so at the end of today, because today is really about going beyond engagement and actually getting into doing something new or differently or better, at the end, we're going to give you a worksheet, a handout, a download. And this is actually something that you can share with your own supervisor, and you can hold yourself accountable for using some of these things. You're investing an hour of your time today. Why not make sure that you're going to use some of these things as you go forward? Now, as with almost every single webinar that we do, I do want to share this participant advisory that there are breakout discussions. You see that plural S inside. So we'll be doing some breakouts. So you're not just going to be listening to me, but you're going to have a chance to talk with each other. And you're going to have a chance to experience these steps in action. And so that's why if we were together in person, I would have you sitting at different tables and getting some conversations going at your tables and then reporting back out loud. And virtually, we're going to use breakout rooms in order to do that. Now, one of the things that happens when we put people into breakout rooms is that suddenly people start to flee. They flee the webinar. And if this is one of your first webinars with us, I would encourage you to stay. And it's not just me saying this. We've asked participants, what do you think of the breakout rooms? And these are some of the quotes that we've actually heard from some of the participants. I really like the webinar, and it's nice to get the opportunity to hear from other trainers in breakout rooms. The only time I really participate is when I'm in the breakout rooms. And also, presentation was great, but the breakout room was valuable in a different way. One person said something, and we all smiled and nodded. We're in the same boat. It's nice to have that shared experience. And so I do encourage you to stick around because the first breakout room is coming up very shortly. The second one will be towards the end of today's session. So, and you can see even in the comments that we're getting some comments about so their people's experiences with breakout rooms during these sessions. The other thing about today, and my colleague Rachel is going to put a link to this resource. If you have not yet been exposed to Endurance Learning's Training Activity Cookbook, it is a free download that we offer. And all the activities that you're going to go through today have been taken from this cookbook. It's just a resource for you. So as you start to think through, okay, if I want to create something that's engaging and also that lets me see if people are getting it, where do I get some activity ideas from? The cookbook is a really good resource for that because it will give you not just a list of activities, but it'll give you a list of activities aligned with these four design steps I'm going to talk about. And the first activity that we're going to go through is borrowed from the cookbook, and this is an activity called magnet poetry. And with this, and if you can think of, a time when perhaps you have these little word tiles on your own refrigerator, or maybe you've been to a friend's house and they have these word tiles on the refrigerator, and you can kind of take these magnets and put them in order to create sentences. That's what this activity is inspired by. And yes, Carissa says every house in the 90s. So clearly, I'm dating myself a little bit with this activity. But we're going to do this activity here in small groups. And the way this is going to work is that I'm going to pose a challenge here. So when you're put into small groups, you're going to have to create a sentence that describes your training design philosophy or your training design process. And it's not just coming up with a sentence, that you can brainstorm. You're going to actually be put into a room and you're going to be given access to a Miro board. And the board is going to look like this. And so what you're going to do is, as a group, you are going to choose or kind of drag some of these magnet tiles to the bottom of the screen. So if you like "we" to start your sentence, you can use that to start your sentence, and then maybe you like the word "change." And so basically, what we're going to ask you to do is to drag these different tiles to the bottom of the screen so that you are able to just kind of create a sentence with your group. And you'll have about 5 minutes or so in your breakout rooms to do this. Now, where are you going to find these Miro boards? Because we're going to put you into about 15 different rooms. And so we're going to give you a handout in the chat. And we're going to ask you before you go into the breakout rooms to download this handout. And that will tell you what room to which link to click on. So if you are in breakout room number one, you'll go to the link that corresponds to breakout room number one in order to find your Miro board and to be able to collaborate with some other folks. If you are in breakout room seven, you'll go to the link that corresponds with breakout room seven. Now, if for whatever reason this doesn't work, if this is a miserable technology failure, you can still go to the second page of that handout, and that second page gives you basically the word tiles that you can use. So Aaron's going to put you into breakout rooms. If you cannot, for whatever reason, get into a breakout room, then just sit tight. When everybody else goes, we'll do this activity all together with whoever's left here in the general room. Now, there is a third page of the handout. Don't worry about that. That's going to be a challenge that comes later during today's session. So, all right, Aaron, if you want to put people into breakout rooms, and for the folks that can't get in there, we'll do a Miro board here.
Give me just one moment because you need one. Um,
And just a quick reminder, as people go into the rooms, not everyone needs to access it. So if one person can share their screen, that should be enough within a group, but multiple people should be able to do it as well.
There you go. It looks like we're starting to get folks into their rooms, and we'll give people a few more moments to go ahead and click on the rooms before we start with this particular group. And as you can see, we have a Miro board up on your screen. And I'm going to work on this board to come up with our own sentence that describes your training design philosophy or process. So why don't we go ahead? I'm going to end the chat. I'm actually going to give anybody who's left in this room access to the board that we're looking at, and we can start to create or adjust the board as we see fit as well. So I'm going to put this board's link here. So if you go into the chat, you can go ahead and check that out. Or if you just want to take a look at the board and in it using the chat, suggest a word or two to begin with, that is totally fine too. So if you're able to access this, you can feel free to, and I see that people are starting to access this. You can feel free to start to move some things around here as well. One of the things about this activity that I do when I'm in person is I will create a bunch of. Aaron, is there something that?
No, sorry, I'm just checking with folks' room. Sorry for, let me turn
Okay,
off the video.
no problem. Um, I love that. So people are, Aaron is going through to make sure everyone else has access. So yeah, I love it. People are starting to put this together. When we're together in person, when we do this, we kind of I give people a bunch of paper tiles and we just kind of put them on the in the middle of a table and the group will start to work just like you're working here, kind of collectively. So even if you're not able to access the board yourself, you can actually see this activity in process here. And I love what people are doing. The work we, and this is tricky because the words, if I was to do this again, I would probably alphabetize these words just so they're a little bit easier to find. But the work we facilitate, I love this. Just kind of watching the work in action here. The work we facilitate impact. And if anybody else is taking a look at this board and if you want to come up with your own sentence suggestion in the chat, even if you're not in the board, you can see what the words are available to us on the board, and you can use the chat to come up with your own sentence there as well.
And
The
one
work we
thing, one thing we didn't do is let them know about how long they have. So, do we want to send a broadcast message out to let people know about how much time they'll have left?
yeah, can do that. Do you want to do that, Tim? Give people about
Yeah. What I don't. I was looking at the how many minutes do you expect?
we'll give them about 2 more minutes.
Yeah.
The work we facilitate impacts learning growth and we'll go ahead and gift some S's um, and strategic outcomes. The work we facilitate impacts learning growth and strategic outcomes. I think it's pretty good in terms, especially when you are limited to the words that are provided there. And it's possible that folks are coming up with a second sentence as well, which is kind of fun to watch. Learners' experiences change. This reminds me a little bit, now that we're out of the holiday season, going back to uh, thinking of the movie A Christmas Story, where he's decoding the message from Little Orphan Annie, and he can't wait to hear what the next word might be. The work we facilitate impacts learning growth and strategic outcomes. I think is a very good guiding philosophy. Learners' experiences change performance. And if you want to use some extra words because we're creating a second sentence, learners' experiences change performance and build skills. Love it. All right. If we want to continue to play around with that, you're welcome to continue to play around. We're gonna bring back the other groups, and we'll see what other folks have come up with. So, Aaron, if you are with us. Might be checking on other groups. So we'll bring folks back.
Whoop.
All right, Aaron, are we back?
I haven't brought everyone back. Are you ready for everyone to come back?
I am. I think I may have done it.
Oh, great.
All right. Welcome
You
back.
beat me.
Welcome back, everyone. All right. So with that activity, and if you, yes, that was fast. The small group activities can seem like they go by really, really fast. And as a facilitator, if I don't keep an eye on it, it's possible for them to swallow up the rest of the presentation as well. I apologize, Gail. If it's a tricky activity. As you can see here, the group that was here it continues to play around and create some different sentences here. I'm curious if there are sentences that your group came up with, or at least fractions of sentences that your group came up with. I love seeing that Lauren's group was fast. So if you could go ahead and share using the chat a sentence that your group was able to come up with. I see Tammy is bragging about room three. So I'm kind of curious what room three was able to come up with. Here in this room, as you can see on the screen, we came up with a few different sentences, and we were at a little bit of a disadvantage because people weren't taken off of mute. So the work we facilitate impacts, we added an S there. Learning growth and strategic outcomes is one kind of philosophy. The other was learners' experiences change performance and build skills to refine confidence. And people continue to play with this particular board. And that's one of the things about these activities is that they can really get people going here. I see Angela says, learners discover experiences that impact and improve behavior. I see to test skills, experiences, capability with confidence to build impact. Um, so yeah, and somebody saying I think the phone's a little different, or the experience is a little different when you're logged in with your phone. We facilitate human-focused experiences to build skills and improve intentional performance outcomes. Also, we facilitate intentional growth that builds to impact strategic results and experiences. We facilitate learning experiences to impact learners' confidence. Focused design experiences with the learners' needs and growth in mind to build experts. I love what people were able to come up with given some very specific structure. So you can come up with your own, and that would have been a lot easier. But for this particular activity, you kind of had to get to know each other, work together, create something. All right. So I'm gonna go back to we're gonna shut down or at least go away a little bit um, from the Miro board that you're able to see on my screen, and we're gonna go back to the slides here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this particular activity in the context of the four steps. So I promised you at the very beginning, you're going to get a chance to learn about and experience endurance learning's four steps to training design. And so this next activity again is inspired by our training activity cookbook, and it's called a top five list. Now, one of the things about this cookbook, similar to just a cookbook that you might use in your kitchen, is that you can feel free to modify these based on the ingredients that you have available. So I'm using this activity that's called top five list. And basically, this is a way to present information just in a tight, ordered sequence where maybe you have five key points. Today, we only have four key points, so it's really going to be a top four list. So that's kind of the activity that this next thing you're about to experience is inspired by. I'm going to talk about endurance learning's four-step process. Am I frozen? I'm seeing a note that says I'm frozen.
I see you just fine, Brian.
Okay.
Yep.
Maybe that was a note about being outside, and maybe that person is in a very cold spot. But it also does give me a little anxiety because I do freeze from time to time with my internet connection here. So anyway, so endurance learning four-step process. So let me talk about this. And the first step is anchor. The second step is content. The third step is application. And the fourth step is future use. I'm going to talk about each of these in more depth as we go here. And my colleague Rachel is going to put this handout that you see on the screen available for you to download. So this gives definitions to what each of these four steps are, and then there's a place to put notes, especially because these four steps are really, really important. And if you skip one of these steps, it will impact the entire learning experience. And so over on the right-hand column, you have a space, even though it's a PDF file, it's a fillable PDF. So you have a space to take notes just to kind of think through, as I'm talking here, think through what happens if you skip one of these steps. What happens to the learning experience? All right, so let's talk about each of these steps in order, and I'll get back to this idea of this magnet activity, magnet poetry activity. So the first step is an anchor step. So these are activities designed to tap into your learners' prior experiences or help set the stage for your content without overwhelming people first. And when I go out and I see when I deliver a train the trainer session or when I'm observing facilitators, this is the step that I most often see skipped. People start talking just about their content without thinking, how do I ease my learners into this? How do I tap into what they already know? And that's a problem for several reasons. And it's not just me saying this. It is years and years, decades and decades of learning science and learning models. So when we think of something called schema theory, this is a concept that's been around for a long, long time. And basically, it says that people don't learn by absorbing information raw. So that means that you can't just start talking about a new topic that people are unfamiliar with. They learn by fitting new information into what they already know. And so this is the reason why I wanted to talk a little bit about and use that refrigerator magnet activity to get a feel for what's your process. And that is a way just to start to get people thinking about training design in general. Now we can start talking about some other stuff. The other thing, again, I talked about this at the very beginning of the session. If you're familiar with Robert Gagne's 9 events of learning, which is something that is really foundational to a lot of ways that the educational theory works, whether you're talking about professional development settings or you're talking about K-12 education settings. And I don't have time to go over in depth all of Robert Gagne's 9 events, but this first anchor activity, this first step, is really shorthand for Gagne's first 3 events of learning. And basically, Robert Gagne said the first 3 things you need to do is you need to get the attention of the learner. And I hope I did that with that magnet poetry activity. The second is that we want to inform the learner of the objective so they know what this is even about. And then the third thing is stimulate recall of prior learning. And that was the specific prompt that everyone had to think about as they were starting to put together their own sentences. Now, once we get past this first step, there are 3 more steps. And so that second step is content. This is where lots of training that I've attended over many, many years, this is where lots of training excels, right? So this is the idea of just sharing information or knowledge or experience while keeping people engaged. And the most frequent ways to do this, the most frequent ways that I've seen people do this is through lecture and PowerPoint. Now, if you take a look inside of the training activity cookbook, there's lots of other ways to deliver content, but even here, you can see that sometimes we just have to share information. Sharing information using lecture, using PowerPoint, in and of itself isn't bad. It's when that's the only thing that you do. That's where we start to find some problems. We start to see less engagement, and we certainly start to see less ability for people to remember and then to apply it after we're done, no matter how important our information is. This aligns with Gagne's 4th event of learning, which is present the content. Now, one of the things that I'm trying to do, and another thing that I took from the cookbook that I'm trying to do here, even though I'm talking about some of this information, I want to try to keep you engaged through note taking. And that's why that handout could be really helpful in terms of just help allowing you to process some of the things I'm talking about and keeping you focused. I didn't just say, here's a handout. I gave you a challenge. Think about each of these steps. What happens if one of these steps is missing? Obviously, if content is missing, for example, then it's really difficult. It could be a fun session, right? It could be an engaging session, but if we're not giving people content, how are we going to expect them to learn something new, or to be able to do something new or differently or better? All right, so we're halfway there. Step one, anchor activities like using that magnet poetry, but it doesn't have to be something that's that involved. It could be something quick as well. Step two is content. Step three is application. Application is really around giving people an opportunity to show us that they can use their new skills, their new knowledge, their new abilities, and it allows us to say, are they getting it? It seems like they're getting it. Or I don't know if they're getting it. Maybe we need to spend a little bit more time on this particular thing. Now, I started by saying one of the things that I see most commonly skipped is that anchor step. People just kind of launch into the content. This application is something else that I see skipped all too often. And this is one of those things where in train the trainer sessions, when I'm observing people delivering some training, and then when they're done, I'll ask them, how do you know that your learners got it? And the response that I will sometimes hear, and it's not a correct response, but it's a response that's kind of natural for people to give, is uh, people were making eye contact with me. Their heads were nodding, so I knew that they were getting it. That doesn't tell me that they're getting it. It doesn't even tell me that they're paying attention. Eye contact means that their eyes are on me. Nodding could be them thinking, I think I want to have pizza for dinner tonight, right? So we don't know what's going through people's minds. We need to give people an opportunity to share. So for you as facilitators, this could mean, or training designers, it could mean creating a small group conversation after we've presented some information. It could be a case study. It could be a role play. There's lots of different things. Again, going into the cookbook, there are lots of different ways that we can engage people through this application step. We don't want to skip it because then we don't know if people are getting it. And then finally, this is again, so the application step, when we think of Gagne's 9 events, this covers 4 of those. So it covers the idea of provide after we give people information, after we've gotten their attention, provide them some learning guidance and elicit some performance, some sort of performance from our learners to see if they get it. And then based on that performance, we can give feedback. We can assess that performance. We can say it was really good or it wasn't, it really still needs to improve. This is an opportunity for people to apply or to practice their skills in an environment without any consequences. The training environment has no consequences. When we're out in the real world, there are consequences. And if people aren't able to do this because we haven't checked whether or not they can do this, there are some significant consequences out in the real world if people don't do things the way that they're being trained to do. Finally, the fourth step here is future use. And these are opportunities for learners to determine how they're going to use this information actually in the real world. This aligns with Robert Gagne's final step, which is enhance retention and transfer. It's really important because no matter how important we think our information is, maybe it's a new policy that people must follow. Maybe it's something that we just in our heads because we have so much experience. There's tons of experience on this webinar right now. Maybe because we have such good experience, we just expect people to really soak it in, right? It's really important stuff. It's important to us. It's important to them and their future, our learners. No matter how important it is, no matter how engaging it is, there is no study that exists that says that our learners are going to have memorized everything that we taught them when they leave our session. So the future use step is an opportunity to give people, could be a job aid, could be an action plan, it could be a checklist, it could be some sort of quick reference guide or other resource, something that people can refer to after the session in order to remember what they learned and perhaps how to do it, especially if they're not going to use it right away. So anchor, content, application, future use, other 4 steps. Now, Let me see. I've been talking here for a little bit here. Now we're going to go into the chat. So get those typing fingers ready. I'm kind of curious when we think of the anchor activity, and perhaps you were taking some notes here. I just want to kind of check in to see what people were thinking here. What could be the impact on the learner if you skip the anchor and you go right into content? So go ahead and in the chat and give me some of your thoughts here in terms of what could be the impact on the learner and their experience if we skip the anchor and we go right into content. All right, so I see disengaged. Their minds aren't primed yet. And that idea of priming the mind, I think, is such an important piece. We perhaps have been planning our training session, could be for days, could be for weeks. We are primed. We're ready to go. Our learners are coming in. Maybe they're coming from another meeting. Maybe they're coming in from a stressful situation at home. Maybe they're just coming in and it's the first thing they're doing in the day. We need to make sure that they're primed. It's not creating a reason for being, yes, all falling asleep. I love these responses. Thank you for this. We're getting such good responses here. Confused about the content focus. Absolutely. Difficulty connecting prior knowledge to new knowledge and difficulty making sense out of it, right? The only thing that we have to go on is our past experience. And so if we can figure out how to fit something new into something that we're already familiar with, it really helps us to get it. All right. So we have some thoughts here. Now, why don't we go into, I'm going to throw another question at you. This next question, and this is something that I hear all the time. I will do these train the trainer sessions. People will nod. They make eye contact with me and they nod about these 4 steps. Beyond that, we will talk about we'll have similar conversations. What happens if you skip these steps? And yet, when people are actually asked to create a lesson plan, and by the way, shameless plug, next month we'll be creating a lesson plan with these 4 steps. So when people are asked to actually create a lesson plan, this next comment is something that I hear a lot. I don't have a lot of time, but I have a lot of information to cover. So we're going to skip the activities so we can be sure to cover all the information. Basically, we're skipping the application step. What's the impact on the learner if this is our comment? I would love to hear in your chat what it is, what could be the impact on the learner. So they're zoned out, they're not retaining anything, stress, boredom, cannot relate the content to application. And that's really when we want to go beyond engagement and have people apply it, we need to make sure that they're getting it. No practical application for real world. So they can't see themselves actually using this information. Maybe they'll use it, maybe they won't. If it's really good information, hopefully they do use it, but we can't be sure that they're using it or that they're going to use it right. Might cover information they already know. That's actually another challenge here is that if we're not doing some of these things, we don't know what our participants know. And so if people are really getting it, that's the other thing. That's the flip side of this. If people are really getting it, if they're getting it like this, we don't have to spend as much time on it. And so that's another way that application activities could be really helpful. Decreased ability to retain information, doesn't cement learning. Does it even make sense? Does it even make sense if there is no structured activity? There's no way to digest the content. Great. I love these comments. So I'm going to give one more question and then I'm going to have you break up again into small groups. But before we do that, one last question here. So what could be the impact on the learner if you don't provide resources or job aids, checklists, other materials that are part of the future use step? So what could be the impact if we're just like, you know what? We've done some anchor activities, we've done some content, we've done some application. Let's move on to the next topic. They'll forget. Yes. This is the biggest piece is lack of relevancy. Absolutely. Processes are not followed. Right. So if we're giving people a process and we don't give them a flow chart to remind them of how to do this, or if we don't give them a screen capture video of, click here, click here, click here in order to fill out this new payroll processing form, whatever it might be, it could be that people are forgetting it. They're not going to be able to apply it. That it could be that they come back to you and waste all your time with all sorts of questions of things that you've already covered, but we just didn't give them a resource there. Learners reach out to the wrong people for information. Yes, lack of accountability, use it or lose it. Absolutely. Great comments. All right, so we are going to revisit one of these challenges here with this next activity. And this activity, again, comes from our training activity cookbook. And it's called envelope questions. And the way this works, and this is an application activity here. So actually, I'm going to pause here and give you I'm going to zoom out here. So when it comes to anchor activities today, there's a couple of things I did. One is I just wanted to kind of see how much experience people had with training design. So even in the introductions, one of my kind of quasi anchor activities was to ask, how much experience do you have? How many years of experience do you have? And then we did the magnet poetry activity as an anchor. Content, I gave you the top four list. Application, we just did several questions where you had to give me some answers so I could see if you're getting it in theory. This next activity is also an application activity. So just because you do one of these steps doesn't mean that you can't kind of go deeper by repeating this step. So what we have today is kind of quasi anchor and then anchor content. We had application with with these questions in chat. Now we're going to have another application activity before we get to future use. So this next activity is called envelope questions. And the way it works, if you're in person, is you will take a piece of paper, you have an envelope, and you give one set of paper and envelope to each small group. And you ask each small group, okay, based on everything we've talked about today, what is one question that you still have based on anything we've talked about? What's a burning question for you? Go ahead and maybe a group has more than one question. They have to decide what's the best question. They'll write it on the piece of paper. They'll fold up that piece of paper. They'll stick it in an envelope. I'll take those envelopes. I will redistribute those envelopes to different groups. And then what will happen is each group will now have a new envelope. They take the question out and they have to come up with an answer. They have to give peer answers to questions that some other people in the room have. So that's what we're going to do here, except we're going to modify it a little bit because obviously I can't have everybody fill out questions in envelopes. So basically, I've written a question that will go in an envelope, and it will be the question that all of you have when you open up your envelope. Now, what's this envelope, Brian? How are you going to get it to me? I'm going to give it to you on the next slide. So here I'm going to put a question here, or kind of a statement in the question. I get the importance of adult learning and active participation. However, I often only have an hour to present. And I generally have 50 or 60 minutes worth of content. I try to leave 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A at the end, but that's really all the interaction I have time for. How am I supposed to actually use this four-step model? You saw kind of a preview of this question when we were talking about, well, what happens if we skip the application activity? But now you gave me some answers kind of in theory. Now I need you in small groups to go a little bit deeper and say, all right, I get we see in theory what the problem is if we skip activities. We're running out of time, let's skip an activity. What I want to ask you then is what strategies can we put into our design so that we're not skipping these anchor application future use activities? So you're going to have I'm going to give you about 7 minutes in your small groups. I know that time is going to fly. We'll go into the same breakout rooms that you had, and you'll use the same handout that you had from your breakout rooms before if you wanted to see this question prompt again. I know some people are joining by phone, and so you won't be able to download that handout. But somebody in your group should be able to repeat this question and have a little bit of conversation. Make sure that there is somebody in your group who is taking notes and can kind of sum up your conversation when we come back in the large group. So, Aaron, I'm going to ask you to put people back into the small groups. For those that can't get into a small group, you'll stay here and we'll just kind of have this conversation via chat. It looks like folks are getting back into their small groups. All right, we have about 7 minutes. So at about 51 after, Aaron, is when we're going to bring people back. But here we are in our group. And you see the question here on the screen. So I'd love just maybe to start out with this big picture question, and if you have some thoughts, go ahead and put it in the chat. So, how am I supposed to actually use these 4 steps if I have limited time and I have so much information to cover? I'd love to hear some thoughts of what's on your mind in terms of how would we do this. Go ahead and put your thoughts in the chat. As people are writing in the chat, this is a very real issue that I will come up with. So I see Maria, I'm starting to see some answers come through here. Maria says, reduce the amount of information in the content section. Reduce the amount of time for Q&A. Give your contact info for questions later. Humberto, if you can't get into the breakout, that's totally fine. So we're having the conversation here. So if you have some thoughts, we'd love to hear your thoughts as well. So I think that Maria's point here is really, really interesting. So reduce the amount of information. Now, one of the things that I didn't mention in the large group, but this comes up sometimes from when I'm having these conversations in train the trainer sessions, especially with folks that work on compliance training, and there's a lot of regulation, and there's a lot of lawyers involved with what information needs to be presented. And sometimes they'll say, "I get all this, but I need to present all this information, and I don't have time to do any more than just present this information. And based on what the lawyers say, this information needs to be presented." And so in those situations, I'll often say, well, then is that a training session really? Are you training people to do something, or are you basically, is it a 60-minute fine print session where basically you're doing an in-person version of having people read the fine print, and then be able to, for legal purposes, check off that they did that, or in e-learning, be able to go read a bunch of information, click next, 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 and then say that they've covered the information. So that's a different situation than actual training. And so when it comes to fighting attorneys, I don't know that instructional designers will have the leg up there. But when it comes to good learning experiences, I see that, like Maria is saying, reduce the amount of information in the content section. Rick is saying, I think from an experiential marketing point of view, can a job aid of sorts be made? Move some information into the post-training quick guides FAQ session. I'm on board with all of that. I think that what we need to do is start out with our learning objectives and figure out, okay, what is it that we've promised that people are able to do by the end of the session? And if we have a 60-minute session, we might only realistically be able to cover 2, maybe 3 learning objectives, with a learning objective being defined as this is our commitment to our learners. By the end of this, they'll be able to do something, and we'll be able to see if they're able to do it or not. When I've been in these situations, when I've been told, oh, you actually, I've had several situations in which I've been told you'll have a half day to do this. And then I've been told, actually, we need to reduce that to about 2 hours. I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Do I cut out all of the content or cut out all the activities and just give content and then hope they remember it? I think that's a really terrible learning experience for people. And so I think that Maria is on the right track here. Reduce the amount of information in the content section, because what people need is the basics of how to do it. And then some of that other stuff can be learned through the application, through discussions, through job aids, through post-training information that can be released to people as well. One of the things that is really helpful for people to keep in mind is that as trainers, we might be experts in the topic that we're presenting on. And it's probably taken us years and years to develop that expertise. For learners, they are given an hour or a half day or a full day, and they will not be at the level we are after an hour or a half day or a full day. So we can't, that should not be our goal. Our goal should not be to take all of our expertise and put it into our learners over the course of an hour or a half day or a full day or however long the session is. So, keeping that in mind, what are the basics? What do people need to be able to do in order to do something? If we think of training as boosting performance, we have to think, what are people going to be able to do? Reduce the amount of content, make sure that there can be some conversation, some discussion, some activities, which it might be role play or whatever it might be, and then get into the conversation. I'm kind of curious, any other thoughts when it comes to this or any other questions that people, and I don't know if we'll have a ton of time because Aaron just mentioned we have 1 minute left till we're bringing everybody back. But when it comes to these 4 steps, I guess maybe one question I'll ask to the group that's still in here is how is this similar or how is this different from what you're currently doing? So in the chat, if you could just say, "Oh, it's very similar," or "We never use Anchor," or something like that. I'd love just to see in the chat what's similar, what's different to what you're currently doing when it comes to putting these 4 steps together in action. So Tuilasa says that we poll learners during interaction, allow engagement, ask questions. So it sounds like there's some similar things. We often forget about the anchor, and you're not alone, Maria. It's something that happens so often. Aaron, I know that we're in the midst of our conversation here, but you can feel free to bring folks back too.
I just closed the rooms and everyone should be rejoining us.
Excellent. Well, welcome back. Hopefully, you had a little bit more time to have a discussion compared to the magnet poetry activity. And so I'm gonna ask if there could be somebody from each of the groups just to kind of sum up some of the strategies that you talked about to help build around a content-heavy design. As I mentioned before, lecture and PowerPoint in and of itself isn't evil. When you only use lecture and PowerPoint, you don't have an anchor, you don't have application, you don't have features. That's when we run into problems. So I'd love to see just in the chat what were some of the conversations you're having, and what would be some of the responses you'd give to somebody who's like, yeah, yeah, I get that, but I just don't have time. We don't have time. Basically what they're saying is we don't have time for good learning. Um, so I see that Jason's saying use Copilot. I'd love to hear a little bit more, Jason, about using Copilot. Like, what do you use Copilot to help you do with that? Uh, we have access to a recording of this webinar? Yes. Everybody who is attending this and anybody who signed up, so and even the folks that weren't able to attend the session, will get a link to the recording of this. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a recording of your particular breakout room. It'll have a recording of me facilitating some conversations here. Group 6. Gerald and Laura had some great call outs around stripping back your content. And that was actually some of the conversation we had in this group as well. Stripping back content by thinking about what you want the outcomes and objectives to be, and then utilizing application to deliver content at the same time. And I think that is genius in terms of, our learning objectives, our learning outcomes are our promise to our learners. By the end of the session, our learners will be able to do something. And if all we do is talk, we've broken that promise. We haven't been accountable to our learners. Combine content and application. That is a strategy that I will use very often. And just because we're not talking doesn't mean people aren't learning. Just think about your experiences in the breakout rooms here. You were probably getting at least as much out of those breakout rooms as you were getting just through the conversations when I was sharing some of the content. Know your audience and then plan accordingly. Incorporate the 4 steps into the content. Finding a piece of information that instead of me speaking on it, small groups can summarize. Yes. One last thing that I'll mention, and then we're going to have to move into our call to action here. One last thing I'll mention is when we're presenting, when we're asked to present, when we're asked to put together a training, keep in mind that we're probably asked to do that because we have some sort of experience or expertise in the topic. And developing that experience and expertise has taken years for us to do. And so we cannot expect our learners to be masters of this content in an hour or a half day or a full day training session. So don't put that pressure on yourself. yes, I have all this information I need to share and I need to pack it all into their heads. They're not going to be experts by the end of your full day or half day or your hour session. So, what we do want is to make sure we've moved the needle. And we can't see that unless we put in some anchor, some applications, some future use activities. All right, so thank you all for indulging us in those conversations. My call to action here goes back to this idea of accountability, and so you all have invested an hour of your time here, and if you want to challenge yourself, my colleague Rachel is going to put this last handout into the chat here, and this is just kind of it's what we call a training design double check. And this is an opportunity for you. Maybe you want to give this to your supervisor. Maybe you want to, maybe you're here with some peers, or maybe you want to just make sure that a peer can check over your work. But basically, this is just saying, here's a checklist. This person just attended this training. Here's a checklist of things they learned. And could you take a look at at my next training session and see if I'm actually changing my behavior or picking up some of these skills or habits that I learned that I spent an hour learning today. So there is an action plan for you to check in with your supervisor. And let's see, scrolling to the bottom. Thank you, Rachel. Now, for those who are interested, next month is going to be a little different. First of all, it's 75 minutes. And second of all, it's going to be much less of me, much more of you in small rooms, creating a training session using these 4 steps and seeing if you can do it. And hopefully you'll bring some thoughts or some real world training programs that you need to put together, and we'll give you some structure to do that. Something else to keep in mind is that if you liked what happened here today and you want to bring it to your organization, type Ask Me into the chat, because we do all sorts of train the trainer services. And so we'd love to talk to you about bringing this kind of information, this kind of experience, this kind of instruction over into your own organizations. Once again, you can connect with Endurance Learning on our LinkedIn page, and there is a QR code for joining us there. Also, if you're thinking, I don't have time to do all this stuff, we have an AI-powered tool called Soapbox, and there is a QR code right there that will take you to this tool, which can help put together anchor content application future use as well as your content, all in the matter of minutes, which is kind of a cool tool if you want to check that out. I do have several books out there, as Aaron mentioned in the beginning. There is we're giving you a ton of QR codes, but Rachel has also put a bunch of links into the chat. If you're interested in any of these books, there is a QR code that could bring you there. One other thing is that some of you have APTD or CPTD credentials, and one thing to keep in mind is that these webinars serve as credit toward maintaining that credential. Also, some people just need certificates to show some of their professional development activities that they've been involved in. And so if you do need a certificate, there is a QR code there that will bring you to a form to fill out to guarantee that you are part of today's session. That brings us to our giveaways. So for those that